Hi, everyone. I am Executive Manager Simone Corprew, and I am back with another look into the making of a show. So today I have Katherine Beamer, who is one of the Wimberley Players' regular stage managers, as well as the secretary for our board of directors. Kat has done so many shows with us and does at least usually 2 a year, I guess. And so she's going to kind of talk to us about what a stage manager is, what they do, because it's something that a lot of people don't know about, I think.
Yeah, it almost every time I have to explain what a stage manager does. I'm like, hi, I'm the stage manager. And they're like,
What's
mean?
that?
Yeah.
So Kat, why don't you kind of introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background about you?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Simone. I'm really excited about this. Hi, everybody. Again, she said Katherine Beamer. I go by Kat most of the time at the theater, but I have been stage managing. Oh gosh, I guess my interest really took off in high school when I was doing theater in high school, and then when I went off to college is when I really started what I would call like real stage managing.
Right.
And actually got taught how to stage manage. And I've been doing that ever since. How many years is that? A lot.
Many.
Many. And yeah, the first show I did at Wimberley Players was Death of a Salesman, which I think was in 2012.
That sounds right.
And I've been doing, like you said, I think I've done 3 shows in a single season once before as well, ever since. I tried counting. I looked at my resume earlier and I tried counting
And you're like, oh no, I
There's
don't
a
want to
lot.
know.
Yeah.
Okay, so the stage manager is really involved at every stage of the process. So why don't we talk a little bit about what a stage manager does at each stage of the process? So, like for example, during the audition process, what is your job then?
So at auditions, it's mostly, and throughout most of the process, it is to help the director of the show. So starting with auditions, it is to collect everyone who is auditioning, their resumes, their headshots, and any audition form that we use. Collect that information, keep it in one spot, and then hand it off to the director so that they have these visuals that they can use, not just seeing the person on stage, but something they can refer back to, such as the resume and stuff. I'm also there to try to do a lot of time management, which is something that we're going to refer to a lot. So keeping track of what time it is, if someone's running late, how we're moving through the whole process in general. And I'm also there just to answer anyone's questions. So I usually like to stay, I'll always ask my director first if they prefer me to be in the theater with them or in the lobby with the auditioners, or just navigate between the 2 places, because I'm there to assist both my director as well as the patrons and the auditioners and assure everyone that they have a good time and make sure it runs smoothly.
Right. And like you said, time management, I think especially in auditions, that can be really difficult for like the director themselves to like keep track of how much time has passed because they're really trying to focus on the actors. So it's really helpful to have someone like a stage manager making sure we stick to 15-minute slots or 20-minute slots or whatever.
For sure, yeah. And to make sure that everyone has their time and their chance to showcase what it is that they can do and present for someone. We don't want to try to ever make anyone feel like they didn't get an opportunity. And this is the best way to say, you know, that's great that you've seen this person for the last couple of minutes, but this person has been waiting for a little while. Let's go ahead and try to bring them in, or help with getting certain sides put together and certain people together. It's like, maybe you haven't seen these 2 people work together yet, so let's put them in next.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know that it's very important at the audition stage.
It is. Yeah.
Okay, so what about like the rehearsal process? I know that's a really involved part for you. So what do you do during rehearsals?
It's actually my favorite part. My favorite thing about being a stage manager in general is that a stage manager is there from inception to completion of an entire show. So you get to see everything and the way it evolves, which is my favorite thing. especially in rehearsals. So when you first start a rehearsal, typically it's with like a tabletop read through. The stage manager usually is there to read the stage directions that are in a play. And then through the rehearsal process, they're there at every single rehearsal. So even if we're rehearsing that night with 2 or 3 people, because those are the scenes we're working on, I'll be there. Or if we're working with somebody with, you know, the whole cast of 20, I'll be there. And I'll be taking what we call blocking notes, which is the director will tell the actors where to move on the stage. We use a lot of terminology like move downstage, move upstage, left, right, and the stage manager has to write all of that down. And I mean all of it down. Yeah. And so and that's to help actors as well as directors try to keep track. So anytime there's a change, we write everything in pencil and then we date it, because if it changes, we can refer back to it. Right. And we never want to erase anything. We always just try to keep as many notes as possible. We also, stage managers will keep track of props that we need, props that we utilize, any costume changes, or what sort of costumes we may need. Obviously, the costume designer keeps track of that too. Right. But if the director happens to mention anything in a process, like, oh, I think this would be a great part for the person to put on like an apron, we'll make a note. Maybe an apron wasn't mentioned before, but we need it for the scene, so we'll make a note. Same with lighting design choices, sound cues. So the director may just say these things, and a stage manager is there to just write down these notes and compile them and send them off to all the designers and a production team to review on a nightly basis. Like after every rehearsal, they send it out.
And after every rehearsal, you create a rehearsal report that includes all those things, right? Yeah, and that goes out to everyone.
Everybody on the team. It's to also help. The stage manager is there to help all the designers. So we call that our production team. The designers, the director, the actors, anyone who touches the show necessarily. Yeah. We're there to assist them with giving as much information as possible. So I could even include things in the report that has to do with marketing ideas, or hey, this person doesn't have a headshot, do we have a photographer available? Right. Help keeping track of those sort of things too.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It is.
And so then opening night comes, and what do you do during the show?
Oh, okay. So opening night comes. The biggest thing a stage manager does during the actual run of a show is call it. Now the time management is another big thing. So we actually call our actors ahead of time to get ready, right? So, and when an actor shows up to do their job, they need the time to get into characters such as their costume, their makeup, do maybe some vocal or physical warm-ups, especially if we're doing a musical. So my role is to get there. I try to always get there before everybody, but I have some really early arrivers sometimes, and that means they need to be there to get into their selves, and I'm fine with that. But I like to give them call times, like, okay, we're an hour before house opens, or we're 30 minutes till house opens, and then like every interval between all that. Right. And then once house opens and everyone's the audience is in the house and it's time to get started with the show, it's my duty to then get on headset, and then what we do is call the show. We have our person who's on a light board and a person who's on a sound board, and I have cues that are written in my book, which I actually have one here. And the cues were given to me by our designers, and then I literally call it. So at the top of the show, the easiest one to think of is like house goes to half. Then we usually have a welcome announcement saying, welcome everybody to Wimberley Players. Just a reminder to turn off and silence your cell phones. Photography is illegal, that sort of thing. House goes out. And then depending if we're starting with a musical, I then also call the music director to start the orchestra, and then lights up, and we start the show. And I
Yeah.
just call every change that happens is something that I call to happen.
Every change. And it might be something that the audience doesn't even necessarily notice. Like the lights might change a little bit, but that's still
Yep.
something that the stage manager calls and takes
Mm-hmm.
care of. It's crazy.
It's really cool too when there's a lot of cues like inside one of each other, which sounds really weird. But you could call a light cue that takes several minutes to happen,
Yeah.
with other cues happening in between that, and set changes. Or hey, we need to go ahead. I'll alert my assistant stage manager or my crew backstage. Okay, so this is about to happen for the next couple of minutes. Stand by for this set transition that's about to happen, or let's get this actor to stand by to enter, those sort of things.
Yeah, because so all the crew backstage is also on headset. So we have a system that'll connect from the booth that Kat sits in to the light board, the soundboard, and then all the crew backstage as well. So they can communicate during the show. And there's a lot of communication.
There is a lot, yeah. And one of the constant things is always also try to remember that there is like etiquette that you also have to think about when you're on a headset. Like if I'm in the middle of calling a cue, it's not that I don't necessarily want to hear what my crew has to tell me, especially if it's an emergency. They have to tell me that something happens. But if I'm in the middle of a cue, we can't have someone else saying the word go, because then a board op, that's the special word. That's what a board op uses to hit the button that changes the next cue. So that's one of the things I like to talk to my crew about ahead of time, is like a reminder. Nobody else says go. When we're in a standby, we don't say anything unless it's an emergency. The crew also gets to have a secondary line that they can talk to themselves. So there's probably conversations happening that I can't hear when I'm doing something too. So there's a lot that goes behind it.
There really is. And something we didn't talk about, but is a huge day for you, is the technical rehearsal, which is usually the Saturday before we open. And that's usually a 12-hour rehearsal, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yep.
And that's a big one for you.
It is a big one. That's probably the most, what's the proper word for it? Not gut-wrenching, but kind of gut-wrenching day. It's the day where after all of these rehearsals and after letting our designers watch the show, the designers have already, let's say, hung the lights or come up with all these cues. Well, it's up to them to tell me when they happen in the book, based off of, is it a visual cue, like somebody crosses, which is where that blocking comes in handy, or something else, like a closing of a scene. So I get these lists, these call cue sheets from our designers, and I put them in my book. And then one cue at a time, we do what we call a cue to cue. And so we'll have the actors on stage, or if it's something that's really technical and we have to work through it first, just to get it in my mouth, because it can be a mouthful, we'll just go one by one, stand by, light cue 1 through 10 sometimes, and sound cue 4 through 8, and then lights go, sound go, lights go, lights go, lights go, and all of these things that have to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, that's stressful because it's 12 hours. That's a long time to be doing anything, but it's also so detail oriented, right? Like things can move around by like, oh, maybe this like you needs to happen on this word instead of this word. Like it's
a lot of fine tuning. There's a lot of anticipation that happens in it too. So that's where having been in the whole process really comes in handy, because it's almost as if you memorize the show, and I sleep it and I dream it and I breathe it and eat it. Like that's how involved you are. And then you get this thing and you just add that final layer. And it's amazing. I love tech. It can be really stressful. It is a lot of work, even for our actors who are there pretty much the whole time as well. They may only be on the stage giving us a handful of lines just to give us, for me, a chance to understand where everything lays out. But it's a lot of work for them up there too. and everyone. And it is time management and making sure people get a chance to breathe and lay down or sit down, stretch out. Standing in one position while somebody builds lights around you is very hard.
Staying very still. So in a typical show, like a play, a straight show, a non-musical, how many like light cues are typical in a show like that?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say less than 100 usually.
Right.
Maybe 60 to 80 light cues depending on how many scenes. Because typically when it's like what we call a straight play, most light cues are just to give you establishments of like time of day, scene change or scene closes, scene opens. Whereas with a musical, you have huge dance numbers.
Yeah.
And so we'll want to change lights or add all these other sort of things. And when we do a musical, those light cues can double or triple in number.
Oh, yeah.
Over 200.
200 times that the lights change during one show. I just want that to sink in for everybody. That is insane. But I mean, it makes the show beautiful.
It does. It does. And same with sound cues. Though I think I have done a couple of shows. Like I think I did Charlie's Aunt, and it had some of the most intricate set changes that we did for a straight play, more than we've done for a musical before.
Yeah.
So there's things like that that'll be really interesting where you have to think about, okay, stand by, we're going to change over the set from a completely interior setting to an exterior garden. So we're just going to flip everything around. It's a lot to work through.
It's crazy. And you said you have a book there with you.
Yes.
So okay, now hold it up and let us just see what your book looks like.
So this is like the Bible. I think this is a 3-inch binder. It's like the Holy Grail for shows. This one was for Young Frankenstein, which was my first musical at Wimberley Players. I will have to warn, it's a couple years old. My handwriting looks like chicken scratch. But it has, let me see some things. Okay, so it's like this big. And it has all these tabbies. This is how I keep track of it. Yeah. And the tabs go for every single song. Now, for a musical, as a stage manager, I'm a musician too. So I learned how to read music. And so for a musical, I actually call my show off of the score. So that way, when there's a light cue that's on like a downbeat, I have notation of where that 8th note happened on the downbeat, and that's where I'm going to have to call it. But through rehearsal processes, it's usually just the regular script, and that's where I'll write down, blocking notes and stuff. So let's see if I can not try to fold it up because it is kind of heavy, but I'll take a couple pages out to show you what it looks like. So this is like the happiest, the happiest town in town, which is the very second song. And you can already see, and I like to use little dots. I don't know if you can see that.
There we go.
So I'll use a little dot for my sound cues. That's green, and then another cue for like curtain opening, and then all 3 of those yellow dots are different light cues that are going to happen.
Like right after each other.
Right after each other. So it literally says sound cue 2 and orchestra go, curtain open go, light cue 4, which goes when the curtain opens 3/4 of the way. So I have to watch the curtain opening, and then when I notice it's open 3/4, lights go. Lights go when a character crosses downstage, and then lights go once something else is lit up. I can't really read it.
I give 6 years ago?
Yeah. And then I give a standby right away for the next cue. So I'm almost always talking over myself.
Right.
So I'll say standby, sound cue 2, orchestra to begin, curtain to open, light cue 4 through 6, and then I'll go sound go, curtain go, lights go, lights go, lights go, standby, light cue 7, lights go.
And it can literally be that quick. Like it is happening that fast. And if you've ever, seen a show with the Wimberley Players, there's that box in the back. That is where
That's where I am.
In there. It's lit up with just a blue light, so that can be a challenge sometimes too.
Can be, which is why I use those little colorful dots. So I write everything in pencil, like I said. Things can change constantly, even during a run of a show.
Mm-hmm.
I'll notice that maybe a character or orchestra is maybe a little quicker sometimes, or a little slower, or sometimes, and it's tough to say, but if somebody becomes injured, we do have to change it up a little bit too.
Yeah.
So things will move. But the colored dots help me to keep track of types of cues that are happening and when they're going to happen. I also draw little googly eyes next to my cues, so I know that I should be looking at the stage. Little reminders for myself. But this book, once a show opens, this book stays in that booth. It does not leave. That way, knock on wood, if anything were to happen to me, hopefully somebody could pick this up, like my ASM, and take care of the show afterwards. This, again, is the Bible for the show.
And I remember when we did Jesus Christ Superstar together, I was your ASM, and I called one of the shows for you. There was something happened. I called one of them. And Kat's book is the most organized thing. It made it so easy. She's so on top of it.
I also recorded the show, which my voice. I didn't record the show. Excuse me. Let me take that back. I recorded my voice of calling the shows, just so that you could get an understanding of the cadence.
And I called the show along with that recording like 4 or 5 times before I called the show.
When you actually did it. Yeah, you practiced it by yourself. I remember that. That was a lot of fun. You did really good too. So that's awesome. As a stage manager has to be super organized. It can seem like a lot, which it is. I love that though. So doing those reports, those rehearsal reports on a daily basis is really, really key. And then we even do those type of reports during performances. So if an actor's costume needs mending, it goes into that report, it gets sent off, it gets fixed within the same day. I mean, sometimes we'll have people backstage who know how to use a sewing machine, I don't, and they'll fix it, and that's great. Or if a lighting cue is acting up, like we noticed that, or the gel's burned out. Gels are the little things that are for colors for the lights. And so we'll put that on the report and it gets taken care of. And then also for production meetings, I'll make reports too of like designer stuff and notes and things from the director. So it's really important that the stage manager understands you have to be really, really good at communication. I am a firm believer when it comes to like over communicating. When we have meetings and stuff, I like to ask the same question 3 different ways. Just to really make sure we all understand or on the same page. Same for like when we're calling shows. I will practice calling the show so many times to make sure it's in my body and I get it really good. When we do warm-ups, especially for musicals, we'll have the actors and actresses warm up an entire musical number for their bodies and their vocals, and I'll be sitting in the audience and I'll be like Q12, go, lights go, sound go. And I'm just doing it without even looking at my book because I'm basically memorizing at that point.
You know it so well. So you mentioned assistant stage managers. So you are the PSM, or the production stage manager. And then you have 1 to 3 ASMs depending on non-musical versus musical. So can you talk a little bit about the differences about what an ASM does and a PSM?
So a production stage manager, they're kind of like the overseer of everything. They organize a lot of stuff, but an assistant stage manager oftentimes, and this was a little learning curve, when you go through your education, you usually learn everything at the same time, how to be an ASM and a stage manager. And so it was really hard to kind of let go of some of the not authority, but of the things that I had to take care of.
Right.
Because like what you did for me as an ASM, I believe is, I think, did you work on the props tracking sheet?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big thing I always ask my assistant stage managers, because they assist me in taking care of my job. And so we can do a show, I think, let's see, I think with like Jesus Christ Superstar, we had hundreds of props.
Yeah.
Like if you can remember the scene where Jesus shows up to the temple and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
he overturns the table. There's coins everywhere. There's
So many
incense
coins.
burners. there's incense burners. There's, well, tables is kind of like a set dressing.
Yeah.
Food, like all sorts of stuff. And so I like to have my assistant stage managers kind of take on that and really track it. And it also helps them learn a lot for what they, if they ever want to become a stage manager themselves. Because if you have to really track not only where things are going, but who touches what, and then you have to be really good at handling actors at the same time. And, you know, if an actor is doing something and they break it, but they don't feel like they're comfortable telling you, you know, that's another big part of it, is working with our ASMs and or the stage manager team in general to get really close relationships with our actors so that we're all comfortable. An ASM will also do our costume tracking. They'll help me with blocking notes. Oftentimes when we do our musicals, we'll split up our groups and somebody will be rehearsing choreography on stage and then maybe some music work or scene work somewhere else in the theater.
Yeah.
And both people will need time management, to take breaks and to take notes from. So an ASM in both of those rooms helping on either side would be great, especially if I get pulled away by a director or a designer and they want to ask me questions or talk to me about something else. So it's like having 3 different brains and 3 different working bodies working on this one production, and it helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a strong relationship that gets built.
It is. I did one musical all by myself, and I was swore to myself, I was like, don't do this
Never.
to you ever again.
Oh my
So
God.
having at least one person, if not more, it's a godsend. It's so helpful. Like I could not do this sort of thing on my own, honestly, ever again.
It's a lot.
It is.
So let's see. What is either like the hardest show you've ever done or the most memorable show you've ever done?
I have a couple different ones.
Okay. For different reasons.
For different reasons, yes. So I've done some shows outside of Wimberley Players too, and I would say I'll give the answers for both, like Wimberley and non-Wimberley.
Okay.
So one of my most memorable, shows that I did outside of Wimberley Players was a play called Down the Drain. And the reason why I mention it is because it was a newly written play, and the director was the writer. And so as we were working on the show, he was fine-tuning the script itself with the actors that we were working with. And that's one of my favorite things as a stage manager, is witnessing that collaboration in real time. And so that was really, really memorable, which is something that at Wimberley Players we're working on. And I'm so excited for when we do get a playwright in and we're going to work on that sort of stuff. I would say some of the hardest shows I've done are at Wimberley Players, especially our musicals, because they're so beautiful and they're so full of things. Like, I think, and every year they've gotten bigger and better. So it's almost hard. We don't. No, we're like, we're gonna raise the bar this time. We're gonna do this. Oh, we did a telescoping stage for Catch Me If You Can. Well, maybe for Next to Normal we can do projections. How about that? If somebody says they want to do any sort of live camera work in the next show, I'm just gonna be like, oh no, we've gone too far.
No more.
Which Next to Normal was. It was a lot because we had also those projections, which I think was the first time I've done a show at Wimberley that did that. I've done them before outside. And so not only do you have light cues, sound cues, set cues, you have projection cues, you have orchestra cues. So
It was a
the
lot.
number of things, it's just so much more.
Yeah.
And they can be, there's some really quick ones in there. So like the Doctor song, what
Mhm.
Dr. Rock or whatever. I
Yeah.
think I literally said, stand by for Dr. Rock. And I just had all of my board ops just
Just wait.
memorize and
Yeah.
wait. And if I said light, sound, projection, go, which is a mouthful,
Mhm.
I would just say, I can't even remember what code words. We used like code words at that
To make
point
it work.
to make it work because it was
Yeah.
like go, 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 go.
Right.
It was the quickest changeovers I think I've ever seen and done, which is so cool. One
Yeah.
of my
No,
favorite
and it,
things.
it worked and it looked really cool and it was awesome, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think is like the most challenging aspect of stage management?
Um, Organization is really challenging. I think it fine tunes a lot of personal things for yourself as a ASM and stage manager. But I think one of the most difficult things is remembering that these are humans.
Mhm.
These are people who are dedicating so much time, so much effort into it, that a stage manager has to be has to check in with everyone.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that they feel supported in the work that they're doing, and that they're being heard for the needs that they have.
Mhm.
So having empathy and being that human soundboard to say, this person maybe doesn't feel very comfortable with this. Maybe we should ask people to take a break real quick,
Right.
take a water break, and then let's come back and re-look at this.
Yeah.
I always try to tell everyone I ever work with that part of being a stage manager is being an advocate for them. And that if they are feeling anything, they come to me, come to my assistant stage managers, which is where I talked about us being a
Right.
heart and brain of a team, is because if there is something that needs to be worked on, we need to know as soon as possible to
Mhm.
advocate for you, especially if
Right.
you're new with Wimberley players.
Yeah.
Wimberley is a family sort of establishment. I feel so great when I do a show there, and I want everyone else to feel that. And that's what I hear most of the time from everybody, is that we have such a family feeling show. Um, so if for some reason, even like we have people who commute a lot.
Uh-huh.
So I've had an actor say, hey, my car just broke down. I don't know how I'm going to get there. They tell me that. I'm going to find out who lives closest to them
Right.
and set them up to try and carpool. I'll carpool you sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, all sorts of stuff. I think I've helped with like ice packs, um, making sure that there's certain foods for our actors, if they are vegan or anything
Right.
like that. And also, like, if I look over and somebody just is like sad or quiet, just
Mhm.
check in with them, see if their
Right.
family's okay. How is it with them? I like to, that's probably the hardest part for a lot of new stage managers too, is remembering that there's a human behind all of this work and to make sure they're feeling good about what they're
Right.
doing.
Yeah, because especially like in our situation where we're not a professional theater, people are coming to
Mm-hmm.
rehearsal, after work, after they have whole
Yeah.
other lives outside
Yeah.
of just this. That's a big thing.
And it affects them completely. And it's a huge thing for someone to say, after working a 40-hour work week, or being a student and working at a part-time job, that they're going to come to this theater and spend
Mhm.
whatever free time they have
Yeah,
working with us to make a show. I want to make it as great of an experience as possible for them.
absolutely. Yeah. And we appreciate them and what they do so much. And
So
we want
much.
you to feel that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, Kat, thank you so much. This has
You're
been
welcome.
great. Yeah, and I'm sure there are tons of people who are going to watch this who had no idea what a stage manager does, and now they know.
Hopefully they don't have more questions. Which if you do, ask me. I'm
Yeah,
always at the theater. So
always. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, Kat. Thanks for doing this. We appreciate you.
no, thank you, Simone. I appreciate you.
Bye.
Bye.